You please confirm if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, Pramod.
Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you for joining, and I'm sure this is going to be a good interactive session. So, just to brief about uh, the company and me, basically, this session is organized by Scholar IT Solution, and when it comes to Scholar IT Solution, so it's a group of IT professional with technical and domain expertise. And if we'll see overall, everyone has gained a good, decent experience, and now they are serving customer all across the globe. It's not about specifically US, but all professional groups are basically serving leading customers across the globe. Now, when it comes to me, I do have close to 16 years of experience in IT in various domains. I started my career as a developer. Later on, I moved to IT infra, and almost from last more than 6 years now, I am working as a cloud architect, where I am managing a leading financial institution based in India. So this session is going to be very basic, which is related to Microsoft Azure. And when it comes to this session, so we'll have little bit theoretical discussion, but we'll prefer to have a direct insight or hands-on, or maybe you can say I'm going to get my hands dirty on the Azure console. Now, why we took this Azure? Because when it comes to a cloud computing environment, so there are four leading players in a market. So the top leader is definitely AWS, which basically owns almost in between 40 to 50% stakes of the market. And if we go to the market, most of the people are familiar with it, which means if we'll go with the market surveys, so at least 50% people are already aware about AWS. Remaining 50% is divided among these three players, which is Microsoft, directly Azure, GCP, which is a Google Cloud Platform, and the Oracle. Apart from this, there are so many small players in the market, but they don't have much stakes. But if we talk about the Microsoft Azure, in last quarter, they have done very good job, and they are now holding almost 17 to 20% market stake when it comes to the cloud computing platform. So we thought to have this session where, because less people have understanding about it, maybe because most of the people are using AWS, so maybe people also start thinking about Azure as a second option when it comes to the cloud environment. Right? So keeping everyone's time in a mind, so we'll prefer to have question answer session at the end of the session. And in between, you guys can note down your questions, and we'll be happy to answer if there is anything specific related to any of the topic which we covered. Now, we'll keep this simple. We'll start with the introductions of the Azure. Then we'll move to designing a virtual networking. We'll discussion what all Azure can offer. And then we'll see how we can create a networking layer there and what all connectivity option related to it. And then we'll be provisioning a resource, basically the virtual machine inside it. And we'll see how we can connect to it. And then finally, we'll move to the backup part. So we'll see how we can create a backup vault there and how we can enable backup jobs, or maybe schedule a job for backups of existing VMs with well-defined backup policies. And then maybe we can see how we can restore the data. And last, we'll be moving to the question answer sessions. So once again, thank you guys for joining it, and I'm sure you will be enjoying it. So let's start with cloud computing environment. I'm sure most of the group in this particular group are familiar with the definitions. We do have something called cloud computing, which simply states cloud computing is an on-demand availability of compute system resources especially data storage, compute power without direct active management by users. Which means, if in a layman I define it, so this is a remote data centers with almost unlimited compute and storage powers with less manageability. When it comes to manageability, basically there are two aspects to it. One is basically IT resources, another is non-IT resources. So every cloud computing environment help you to offload your non-IT resources by 100%, which means you are not responsible for managing non-productive works, which means physical space, power backup, cooling, physical security, electronic security, and so on and so. So the only part left with is basically your IT part. So if I generally describe, in IT, basically we do have 7 layers starting from application, data, virtualization, servers, then storage, networking, and so on. So based upon categories of the cloud, so you will be gaining the access, or maybe you will be the person who will be responsible for managing certain layer out of it. If you'll see, we generally define it basically 3 categories: application, platform, and infrastructures. So the application part is treated as a software as a service, where you will be taking your software in a cloud and just using it. You don't need to worry about backup mechanism. You don't need to worry about bottom line infrastructures. So just over the internet, you will be using. A well-known example is all leading email services, or maybe most of the people I'm sure using HRMS or maybe payroll services in their own organizations. So every this category falls under software as a service, or maybe you can say applications. In middle, we do have a platform dependent. Then bottom line, we do have a infrastructures. So if I describe the controls, in application, you won't be getting much controls apart from managing application layer. But when it comes to infrastructure layer, you will be getting a higher controls, which means up to the operating system level, you will have full controls. You will have full controls on the networking layers, whatever you want to control in terms of inbound or outbound. So if your organization is willing to manage your data center by and want to, maybe just because of the internal business reasons or maybe the company policies or governances, so infrastructure is going to provide you the maximum controls. So if you see, everything is on cloud, and when it comes to manageability, even you can manage it with the help of your smartphone. So all leading handheld devices, basically tablets, mobile phone, desktop, laptops, and servers. So the way you want to integrate, the way you want to manage it, so you do have full flexibility around it. So it's in your hand, sitting at your home, you can manage kind of any size of data center in a cloud, which is maybe 1,000 miles or maybe a couple of 100 miles from you. So it's not that where you have just kind of this controls. So not only from manageability, but even you can design it on the web, whatever you want to do it. So that's the introduction about Azure Cloud Computing. I already mentioned, like, nowadays Azure is becoming much popular, slowly gaining the market stake. And if you see in last quarter, it has done really good job, where they have moved their stakes from 8 to 10% to 70 to 20% in the market now. Now, if we move to the next layer, basically, we do have something called Azure Virtual Network. When it comes to any of the data center, networking layer is going to be the backbone. So without it, you won't be able to enable communication, even the resources within the same data centers. So here, your resources are 1,000 or maybe some few hundreds miles away from you. So networking becomes an important layer. So if we'll go with this, so as a first step, either it's a AWS cloud or maybe Azure cloud, GCP cloud, or whatever the cloud is. This is going to be your first layer. Now, if we'll see, in this architecture, so basically this is a most extensive used architectures. Now on the left hand side, we do have a virtual network which is part of Azure. Maybe you can say this is part of infrastructure as in SaaS, so infrastructure as a service. On the right hand side, we do have a dedicated PaaS, which means your platform as a service. And the bottom line, you do have a on-prem data center or maybe your own office. So if you'll see, three layers are talking to each other with the help of a network connectivity. Now, sitting in your office, you do have a direct connectivity to Azure data centers, and that will act as in your local connectivity. So every traffic will go via this site-to-site VPN tunnel, which is a most secure methods with most advanced encryption layers, which are not possible to crack as on today. Then maybe you deployed certain application on your layer, and in a backend you want to use some platform dependent application, for example, caching services. Maybe your application required caching services. So Redis is well-known caching services. There are two leading services when it comes to caching. One is Redis, another is Memcache. So all the such kind of integration is few clicks away from you. So if you know the bottom line concept, over the mouse, you can easily design these infrastructures. So if you'll see, you do have a load balancer, which will be public facing entity for you that will be calling app services. In app services, maybe that is basically going to interact with maybe multiple databases, or then maybe in between there is a caching layer, and maybe you are using on-prem data center for backup, or maybe ADR sites. So a couple of scenarios can be played around it. So if we go down and discuss about creating an VMs, so basically based upon this environment, so your VNet can have two subnets. Basically two type of subnets. Exactly, I won't say two subnets. It's a two type of subnet. Public subnet and the private subnet. Public subnet basically is nothing but the resources, whatever we'll put it there, those resources will be public facing, which means if you will allow access to public, those resources can be accessed from anywhere. So here, point to note is, putting up resources in public subnet does not mean anyone can access by default it. So whatever you will open to public, that public can come via that route only. Let's say I deployed a virtual machine and I open a maybe that a Windows based machine, and I open a RDP port for that. Now what will happen? Anyone can try connecting RDP port from anywhere. But keeping security in mind, most of the people, what they do, they prefer to open management port only for certain networks. Maybe using the fixed IP addresses, or they try to manage it with the help of remote access VPN, or maybe through site-to-site VPNs. Maybe application layer, either it's a web or app, so that can be public facing using maybe HTTP or HTTPS protocol, whatever falls under your company policies. Nowadays, if you'll see, definitely HTTP is open, but your URL is automatically converting in a backend. If let's say if you initiate a request using HTTP, so it will automatically get converted to HTTPS in backend, and a communication between you and the application will automatically encrypted and secured with the help of SSL layer. Or now SSL is basically slowly people are upgrading it to TLS. So in the same row, so you do have choices where you can deploy your VMs in public subnet. You do have a second choice where you can deploy your VMs in public subnets, private subnets, sorry. So when it comes to deployment in private subnet, so your connectivity method will get changed because now resources are in private subnet, so you cannot come via public channels. So you need to change your method to manage them. So there are three choices for it: jump servers or maybe best in host. Then we do have remote access VPN and IPsec site-to-site VPNs. So if there is a requirement where multiple people needs to manage it from a specific place, so you will be going via IPsec site-to-site VPN route. If you do have people, they are working from home and maybe from multiple locations, so you can take remote access VPN routes. So keeping current situation in mind after COVID, I'm sure everyone is aware, like remote access VPN is now very much popular across all industries. So this is widely used nowadays. Then direct method, we do have jump server or bastion host, which is nothing but another sub server which is going to run in public subnet now, because public subnet is connected to the private subnet. So what you will do, you will first log into the server in the public subnet and then it will redirect your request to the instance in the private subnet. So jump server or bastion host is basically nothing but an intermediate layer between you and your virtual machine in private subnet. When it comes to connectivity, so for Windows, simply everyone knows like RDP is a well-known protocol which is used for remote connections. So you require username and password for it. Linux is a secure keychain based method where you need to use SSH as a protocol and you require a SSH key. So when it comes to key, basically it's a lock and key combination. So each key has two components, public and private. So public will always be reside on the server side. You will be using private key. And once you will be initiating a connection, you will be passing the private key along with the connection request. If there is a successful match between public and private key, so you will be allowed to connect to your Linux machines. So when it comes to supporting the environment, all leading platforms, almost every Linux player like Ubuntu, SUSE, Fedora, Red Hat, right? So all are available as a part of their portfolio. So you can use anyone, whatever your company want. Windows. So whatever the operating system is supported by Microsoft, so that is available there. So if you'll see, nowadays Microsoft has already declared end of life and end of support for 2008 R2. Now people are moving to latest generation, which is 2019. So starting from 2012, 2016 and 2019, these are the three categories of the Windows Server which are available in there. So slowly and slowly, based upon their internal policies, they are upgrading, and even you will find certain images which are pre-deployed with other tools. When it comes to the licensing policies, so you do have both choices. If you already have a license which you want to use in Azure, so you do have that choice where you can use your own license. So if you already have a license, that will bring down your cost by 40%, I believe. And if you don't have any license, maybe licensing cost can be part of your bundle of the VM charges. So both options are there. Moving back to the almost last stuff of this PPT, backup and restore. So when it comes to backup, so whatever the resource you are going to provision in Azure, so you can backup it. Now, when it comes to taking backup, first and foremost it is as an Azure recovery vault. So it is a recovery vault. It's similar to a vault where you can dump your data. Now, dumping of data can be your files, which is there directly from their object-based storage, or maybe your VMs. Or even if you go via you're on, let's say you do have on-prem data center, now you want to take backup. So Azure Vault and Recovery Vault option also support on-prem backup. So which means you can install agent on your on-prem machines, and that agent will basically put your data in a container and push it to the recovery service vault. And once you do have any backup, you can store it. Now, when it comes to restoring it, so you do have two choices. Either you can, let's say if we took an example of virtual machine. So what we can do, we can take the backup, and once that backup is available, that can be restored in a fresh VM, or even that can be used to replace the same VM. Let's say I took a backup at current state, and now maybe after working for 30 minutes, I decided to go back to 30 minutes on the same machine. I don't need a new one. So I can use that backup to restore in the existing one. So from the PPT perspective, guys, that's all from my side. Now we'll come back to the question and answer session in the last. So let's go to the console side. If I take you to the Azure console, so on a dashboard, on the left hand side, basically we do have multiple tabs, and the first tab is related to all the services. All the services, what basically they have done, whatever they offer as a part of their portfolio, they have categorized it. So if you see, we do have a compute, we do have networking, we do have a storage, we do have web, mobile apps, containers, databases, analytics, and everything. Right? So as I said, first and foremost thing is the networking layer. So if I take you to the networking layer, so we do have so many components as a part of it. So virtual network, load balancer, CDN profiler, network watcher, public IP addresses, public IP prefixes, route tables, gateways, firewalls, and blah, blah. If you see, there is a big list when it comes to the networking components. So if we start with designing a virtual network, so simply, I already have one, but let's create a fresh one. You can click on a add button. So if you'll see, it's loading. You need to choose your subscription and then basically your resource group. So basically subscription is nothing but your account, and resource group is nothing but a container inside that account. Maybe let's say you want to segregate, you want to have one container for IT, another container for finance, maybe within the IT you want one for QA, one for dev, one for testing, one for prod, and so many things. Right? So then basically you need to define name, maybe demo games. Reason, this basically lists down all the options for basically supported by Azure. If you see, there is a big list. So it covers almost every continent on the world map. And even if I give an example, so it's cover US East, West, Center, and South. So depending upon your requirement, you will be selecting a geolocation. Now, what will be the criteria for it? In ideal scenarios, the first criteria is you have to identify the nearest data center to your office. Maybe if I give an example, let's say I'm sitting in India. So for me, my company and my operation is in India. So there is no sense to have a data center in US. So preferably I will be using some data center in India. So to start with, you can choose any one of your choice. So let's say I took US East as in my choice. Then IP addressing. So this will be your address space. This is an editable field. If you want to edit, let's say you want to use a network starting with 20.20, maybe 0 or 0. So /16, basically this is nothing but size of your network. So if you'll go with the networking fundamental or definition /16, I believe capable enough to hold 65,534 hosts. Those hosts can be in one subnet, or maybe you can create a logical layers within it. That is basically treated as an or defined as an subnets. So in my case, I decided this as a subnet network, and then basically there is a subnet you have to add it. Maybe if I click on the add subnet name, maybe demo sub. One. Size of the network, basically this subnet /24. This is for small size network. Basically it will provide you 256 hosts, 255 hosts inside it. Out of this, 6 IP address will be reserved, so you will be getting almost 250 hosts inside it. So if I add, so your subnet will be listed here. If you see, it clearly says you will be getting 251 hosts, 5 will be reserved. So this is one logical layer. In the same way, you can add multiple subnets, maybe demo sub 2, then subnet range. I already use 20 dot, maybe next will be 0/24. So if you'll see, I added 2 subnets. Security, Western host by default disabled. DDoS protection, it's a advanced layer basically which covers your network and application layer attacks. Firewall by default disable. If you want to enable, you can do it. Tags, maybe name. This is for IT. Review and create. So before creation, it is going to validate everything in a backend. If you have defined correctly, it will pass the validation test, and if it is passed, you can simply hit create. Now what this is going to do, it is going to create a virtual network in Azure with 2 subnets inside it. So if you see on the top, you can see there is a job deployment going on. And here you can check the status. Your deployment is complete. Now you can go to the resource. So to go to the resources, either you can click it here on the left hand side. If you click on the virtual network again, so you need to refresh it, and you will see you got your virtual network here. Now if you go to this virtual networking layer, so all internal component which we discussed like VPN, gateways, route tables, everything will be part of it. If you'll see, this is your address space which we used. So you can see your address count is 65,536. Connected devices currently no, it's 0 because we have not deployed anything. Subnets we deployed 2. DDoS protection no. If you want to change it, firewall no. Maybe security, we have not gone for anything, right? So in the same way, DNS servers, so by default there are multiple layers as a component of it. So if you want to change any option, so you do have full flexibility post provisioning even it. So this way basically you can go back. If I take you PPT, so we designed this layer. Now when it comes to this connectivity, so you can deploy these services somewhere and that can talk to it because they are part of Azure. You have to establish that connectivity. When it comes to connecting it with your on-prem data centers. So that is not an one individual's job. So you required your network engineer to be part of that activity. So that guy is going to provide you the required details like your gateway IP address, internal subnets, and then basically the access control list, which is going to allow the traffic through it. So this way, basically, you can design a virtual network here. Now, as the next step, if you go to virtual machine tab, you can go directly here. Those are recently used tabs. That's the reason everything is listed here. Now, or maybe you can go to the services, and if you go to compute, so you will find first tab as in virtual machines. So you do have both choices there. If I hit virtual machine, it will take us to the virtual machine console, and you will see currently I do have a virtual machine running. Now that is an old machine, maybe I can stop or maybe delete it. Let me delete it. Meanwhile, in parallel, we'll provision fresh. So in backend, if you see this is a multitasking console, you can perform multiple jobs at one point of time. In parallel, I initiated deletion of a virtual machine. Now add virtual machine. So in the same way, it will come up with another template. So we have to provide multiple information here. Resource group, virtual machine name, maybe demo VM. 01. Where you want to do it, you can select that. Redundancy level, we don't want to go in that now. Maybe at later stage, we can, maybe in another session, we can discuss the internal part of it. So if you'll see, you do have multiple choice here based upon the available operating systems. Windows 10 Professional, 2012, 16, 19, Ubuntu, Oracle, Linux, Debian, CentOS, SUSE, Red Hat, Fedora, and everything is listed here. So let's say I want to go for 2019 as an OS. So we'll select that. So here is the pricing option which is available. Username, maybe let's say I said P. Kumar, password. You need to have complex password. So I put up my standard password. It matched. Inbound rule. So because this is a Windows instance, we need RTP as an port, which should be allowed to connect. Now licensing option, if you'll see, I mentioned 40%, but it's a 49%. If you do have your own licenses, you just need to tick this checkbox. Next, basically the storage option, which is associated with it. So depending upon your requirement, you do have multiple type of disk available here. So standard HDDs, nowadays absolute from the market, standard SSDs and premium SSDs. So basically SSDs are widely used, keeping applications performance in mind. So you will be getting high read and write speed from these disks. These are solid state drives, very fast as compared to normal magnetic disk drives. So by default, you will be getting a root volume. If you want to add additional volume, so you can create and attach it. Even at later stage, you can do it. If I go back, hit next, then this is my networking layer. If you'll see, I do have multiple choices here. Let's say this is my network. Subnet which you want, you do have both subnet available. Let's say you want to use this one, you can select simply way. Public IP address required because I need to connect to it. Network security group basics, public outbound port, inbound port, by default 3389 is allowed. Do you want to add this to load balancer? So we have not provisioned any load balancer because we have not deployed any application on it. Management. So it says enable with managed storage account from the boot diagnostic perspective. So I don't need it. All options can be basically selected based upon the requirement. So if you want to use Azure Active Directory for login, that can be joined. Auto shutdown, maybe you can put up some job here. At that point of time, VM automatically got down, maybe a recovery and all. This is important from patching perspective. There are two choices. They will automatically patch in backends, or maybe if you want to use your own patching plan, so maybe you can go for the manual one. If you hit next advance, if you want to install any extension, you can select that. If you want to run something at startup level, so you can do that. Right? So if I hit tags, give name maybe Windows Server. You define the tags. Tags are nothing but identity symbols. These are widely used to identify the object. Maybe there are multiple VMs. So if you'll assign tags, you will be easily able to identify why I created this VM, or maybe whom this VMs belongs to. Validation passed. So this is again, like as I mentioned, whatever resource you are going to provision in Azure, so it will go through the validation process. If I hit create button, now what it is going to do, let me clear my old junks. So I submitted it. So it will create multiple components which are associated with it, like disk, public IP address, network card, then it will assign host name, and so many other components. So this deployment is going on. So generally it takes 3 to 4 minutes. I think it's stuck somewhere. Yeah. So if you'll see, deployment has been now initialized, and you can see submitting deployment. So this resource creation is now initiated. So you will be getting your component one by one here. The way it will create, so that will added here. So generally it won't take more than 3 to 4 minutes. So it's the maximum time I'm mentioning. So ideally it will take 1.5 minutes. So if you see, IP address deployed, network security group deployed. In the same way, it will deploy disk, and then basically associated, merge all these components. And once that is done, if you'll see, network card is created, and this VM is now deploying. So if you'll see, the resource deployment is completed. You can go to resource from here, or maybe if you go to the virtual machine section, you will find two VMs there now. Let me refresh this. So this is your VMs. One I deleted, so I left with only one VM. If I click it here, so I will be getting all the details. So this is my public IP address. If I copy this to clipboard and go with RDP as a protocol, simply hit it, asking username and password. So I need to add administrator as P Kumar. My password. So finally, if you'll see, I'm able to take my remote. So this is my server, which is deployed in cloud, and I can log into it with the help of RDP. It's a pretty straightforward process. Now, if I take you back to the PPT, we covered networking part, we covered provisioning of VMs, and we connected it with the help of ID and password. If we move to the last section, basically backup and restore. So I need to go back to all services. I need to find for recovery service vault. I already have one. Maybe I can create another one from the demo perspective. If I create it, simply I need to hit add button. So basically when it comes to recovery service vault, it supports two options. One is basically backup and another is basically site recovery. If I take you to the PPT, so I'm already mentioned here backup and site recovery. So when it comes to backup means taking the backup of your resource in the same data center. Site recovery, take your backup and take it to the another geolocations, maybe in another data centers in your geolocations. So both has their own use cases. If you want to go with a DR approach, so site recovery option is the right choice. If you just want to have backup, maybe let's say your development team is working, they want to frequent backup, so no sense to have a site recovery backup for them. So maybe you can keep their backup on the same sites. Vault name, my demo vaults. So one thing you have to keep in your mind while creating this vault. So wherever you do have your resources, you have to create your vault in the same region. Which means, let's say I do have resources in India, so I cannot have my vault in Singapore, or maybe I cannot have my vault in US. So let's say I do have my resources in India, so I will be having my vault in India only. So I do have this VMs in US East, so I will be creating it, again validating, passed, create. So it won't take time, it's super quick, hardly will take maybe few seconds. So if you'll see, deployment is in progress, and now very soon it will deploy. It's done. You can go to resource. If you go to this resource, so you can clearly see you do have two choices. One for backup, right? So currently we don't have any backup. Second for site recovery. Currently we don't have any site recovery. What all it supports, if you see, backup center for Azure VM, Azure database, or PostgreSQL, and so many other options, right? So multiple choices are there. So backup can be for your own resources in the same one. Site recovery I already mentioned. Now let's say I want to take the backup of my virtual machine. So I do have two ways. I can directly go to my virtual machine and then initiate a backup from there. Or I can initiate a job from the recovery vault itself. So let's say this is my VM. If I scroll down under operation, I will be having backup option. If I click on a backup, so currently I don't have any backup. So do you want to use recovery vault? Let's say I want to use existing one. Which one? Let's say my demo vault. Backup policy. So by default, it says daily at 2 a.m. UTC with a retention period of 2 days, right? So if you don't want to go with the default policy, you can simply create your own policies. Policy name, my BKP. Let's say daily 4 a.m. Time zone, maybe let's say EST. Retention period, by default 2 days. Let's say you want to use 7 days, that is your choice. Says it must be enablable. Let's say I don't want to go with that way. It can't be more than 5. Right? Weekly backup, you can put up it here, monthly backup, even yearly retentions. So daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. So what you can do, you can define your retention period for each backups. So let's say you do have certain data which you want to retain it for a year. So you can tag them. So here I have not configured anything else apart from the daily retention. So if you see, now my new backup policy is listed here. If I hit enable backup, so it's going to validate this job again. And if everything is in line, so it will basically put up this job. Now when this job will run, this job will automatically get execute at 4 a.m. Still validating. It's taking longer than expected. So maybe we can wait for some more time, or so this way guys, you can create a backup jobs and enable backups for your VM. Even in the same way, if I go to all my resources, let me open it in a new tab. all resources, vault, recovery vault. Backup. If I hit backup, it will go down and ask you to list your virtual machine here. So currently I have not added any virtual machine. I need to add my virtual machine to this job. If you see, I do have this job and I can create a job from here. Right? I don't know what has happened to the job. It's still waiting, but maybe let's try to do it from this place. So this way, guys, you can take the backup. So if I hit backup from here, maybe there will be a conflict between these two jobs. So I'm not sure which one is going to complete it and which one is going to fail. So if you see, resource group it's going to deployment. Now it's going to definitely going to happen because job has initiated. So this is your pretty flat method. So once we do have backup, we can perform the restoration as well. So I believe this is from my side, guys. If you have any question, we can move to that. Guys, anyone has any question?
Yeah, Pramod. Siva this side.
Yes, Siva.
Yeah, the backup means it will support either file system or a total VM snapshot. It will take backup.
So it will take the when it comes to recovery, you will be getting both options. If you want to recover a file, you can recover it.
If I want to take, if I attach some EBS volume, so in that volume I created two file systems. So one is temporary, one is main. So I need to take main file system as a backup. For temporary file system, it's not required to take backup, right? So
Definitely you can.
Is it really possible to take to file system level backup is available in Microsoft Azure?
So yes, in that case, basically, if you'll see, you do have a second choice there where you can take the backup of the additional resources.
Can you show me that? Means you taken only that VMs, right? You selected as a demo VM.
Yeah, so I just taken the VM even because I don't know that is very slow. This has not even yet completed. So maybe I can send you the steps. So guys, maybe what you can do, we do have a Google form there. You guys please fill up those information, and whatever your questions are there, maybe we can send some screenshot or maybe a kind of a one-pager document related to questions. So what we'll do for your question, what I will do, I will send you the steps how you can take the backup without or maybe excluding additional volumes. That's what your requirement is, right?
No, not volume. If some volume, so I'm created multiple partitions like file system.
Okay.
So it required only some file system as a backup. So not
Okay.
all EBS that volume.
Okay.
So suppose you take 8 GB volume. So I partition
Mhm.
two types, like 4 GB for temporary and 4 GB for
Mhm.
main. So I need to take
Mhm.
that 4 GB main transaction as a backup. So remaining 4 GB is not required to take a backup. In that
Okay.
case,
So
possibility
Shiva,
is there to take backup.
so we'll check on this and maybe we'll send you the steps for this.
Yeah. And one more is there auto scaling facility is available. Is there in Microsoft Azure? Like,
Yes. So there is a skill set option is there. So definitely you can use it. So Azure also
every time you are
support.
one more. Every time you are entering resource group, right? What it means? Resource
So
group you are
basically
saying.
resource. So if you'll see when it comes to Azure as a subscription on a top level, you do have Azure account, right?
Yeah.
So when it
Okay.
comes to Azure account, under that account, you can create logical boundaries inside it. So resource group is nothing but a logical boundaries inside an Azure account.
Is it required mandatory to enter that resource group? Means AWS
So
is
definitely, let's say,
I'm not seen actually this resource group like that. So we're like creating VPC.
no, definitely you need
Just for,
resource group. So if you'll see, you created an account, right?
yeah.
Post creation of the account, you need to put up some resources. So
Yeah.
those resources are going to reside in resource group. Now,
Means that
either you
unique
can
number
have one.
by using that number we can able to find out which how many resources that ID is creating, right? For that identification purpose only we are
Yes,
entering that
absolutely.
resource group number.
If you'll see, it's a collection of resources. So generally, if you
Yeah,
remember,
understood.
like I give an example, I give an example of IT department. Now your company is in core IT services company. So maybe you want to have a separate costing or maybe separate policies for development, for developers, testers, and basically the production environment. So you don't want all resources to touch production environment. So what you will do, you will create three resource group, one for developers, one for tester, another for the production. So in production, you will have very tight control. In developer, you will have more maximum flexibilities. In testing, you will have lesser flexibility, right? So that's where resource group come into picture and help people to do this.
Yeah, thank you. One more customized AMI possibility is there. Like, so I need to created some image. So I need to convert that image. Where can she see here like that customized marketplace is available like in AWS, right?
Yes, marketplace is available here. So as I mentioned, like this is when I created this, those are the standard templates.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to have some specific software, so you can go to the marketplace, and from marketplace you can launch a VM from directly from there. Now, once you will be launching that VM, that will come up with preloaded stuff inside it.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Pramod. Can you share me the steps how to take the file system backups? Okay. I'm already
Will do,
found.
definitely do that. So I'm sure you have fill up the information,
Yeah.
contact information. Yeah.
Yes, I feel.
So definitely we'll send it, Shiva. Anyone else, guys? So I believe the job is also done. Maybe if I take you to the recovery vaults. So virtual machine.
Hi Pramod, I have one question.
Yes, please.
Suppose I have to take the backup of my SQL server, so I have to go to this option, no, SQL server. In that, I can find that option of
Absolutely.
backup
So if
something.
when
And
when
another way is like I will go to this recovery service vault, no. So we have
yeah,
two options taking backup.
which two options you are talking about? Site recovery and backup.
Suppose I have to take the backup of my SQL server, so I'll go to SQL server. In that, you're expanding, no, this one demo gap something. So I'll expand this SQL server. In that, I can find that option, no, backup option.
Absolutely. So let me take you to the recovery
SQL
vault.
server.
So
Yes.
yes, there will be an option there.
Okay. See, in SQL server, SQL
Let me
server.
go there. No, even if you go to the recovery vault, there will be an option for it.
Okay. Okay. So from suppose I have to set the policy for my SQL server and my virtual machine, so I can do that, no?
If you
Uh,
add backups,
okay,
instead of virtual machine, here SQL
okay,
Server in Azure VM.
okay,
So you will start this. So once you do have that, you will initiate discovery. So that
okay,
will list database inside it. Now you can select which database you want to take on backup. So currently I don't have any database, but definitely that can be done.
okay, okay.
So guys, this is just in start of this introduction session. Maybe we can have more specific sessions like SQL Server is widely used in Azure. So maybe we can have one session for databases at some later stage where we can cover this through the lab-based sessions.
Okay.
But yes, in simple way to answer to your question, yes. So you do have a method where using this recovery vaults, you can take the backup of your SQL Server running at any machine.
But in recovery service vault, I am getting only one option for where I can take the backup of my SQL server, but it is not listing all my SQL server.
You have to ensure that while creating a
Yeah,
recovery vault, you
yeah.
have to
Suppose
create.
I have 5 SQL server, okay. So I have to take the backup of my one SQL server only. So means how can we list?
That's what I'm mentioning. What you have to do, let's say you do have 5 SQL servers.
Yes, right.
So provision all those 5 servers, you have to provision your recovery vault in the same region. The first step. Maybe while
Okay,
creating a recovery vault, you have selected a
okay,
different region. That's the you're
okay,
unable to locate your database instances there.
okay, okay.
And maybe if you are still struggling with it, maybe sometime later we can have a remote session and I can help you in checking it, how to do it.
Okay, 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 okay. Okay, thank you, Pramod.
Okay. So anyone else, guys, before we wrap up? If you have any question, guys, please feel free to post on the group. We'll happy to answer it.
Yeah,
So
Pramod, I have
hope
one
this
more
session
query.
was. Yes, please.
Can you go to that IP address field via virtual networks?
Okay.
So when adding subnets, is there one field is there service endpoint? What it means actually?
Yeah, service endpoints basically, let's say if I talk about storage, let
Yeah.
me try.
Same like it means the cloud front edge location,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes, let's say this is your Azure
So
account,
means
right?
a low bandwidth, high availability.
Yeah.
Like
So
that
if you'll see, this
functionality is
is your
there.
Azure account, this is your
Okay.
resource, this is your another service. Now there are two methods. One, you come to connect to this service through public space and you connect like it. Service endpoints basically provide the secured connectivity between these different services within the Azure.
Okay. But these two are in same segment, right? Internally it will connect. Why you need to go again to private public subnet? Those are
No,
in
so
10 dot, sorry,
upon
10,
service
20
to
dot something. Right?
it's depend upon service to service,
Yeah.
right? Certain services which basically are capable enough to work internally, certain services where if I talk about storage, right? If you create an storage, so while creating an storage, you can grant. So there are many methods. So guys, it's a big subject altogether when it comes to connectivity. So we have just covered
Means
quite
it's like
a
a function like a cloud and cloud front, right? In AWS for low bandwidth.
cloud front, something different, guys. So CloudFront is basically a CDN services.
Yes.
So here we also have different CDN services. If you go to the services portfolio, all services, search for networking. So you will find a service with CDN, some name with CDN. Here it is, CDN profile. So every cloud provider has same kind of a services, maybe with different names.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, if you go to the services, we simply select in under networking, we do have close to 50 plus odd services. And now if you want to go to mastery around it, it's going to take maybe a couple of years. Wherever you feel that we can make some changes to improve and maybe we can help people in by sharing knowledge. So we are happy to do that. So your feedback is really valuable to us. So please do share it. Thank you guys. And thank you for joining it.
Yeah, guys,
Thanks,
please give
Pramod.
the feedback. Then only we will conduct more sessions on Azure. Please give feedback in the comment sections. I shared some links, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can give feedback. And also, I gave one link WhatsApp group. There we can share the stuff regarding to Azure. Okay, interested people, you can join that group also. Thank you. Thank you, Pramod.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys.